Hey everyone, welcome to the American Sidebar podcast. I'm your host, Joe Fitzgerald. The date is November 3rd, 2023. Along with me is my co-host,
Brian Mason.
On today's show, we have Rhea and Angela from Crunchy Preppers. Brian, can you tell me a little bit about Crunchy Preppers?
Joe, people who want to be prepared, whether it's natural disasters, financial insecurity, or the zombie apocalypse, they become preppers. They learn to be self-sustaining. They learn to properly handle firearms. They stockpile canned food and water, medicine, and other necessities. When granola moms want to do all these things, but don't want the chemicals, drugs, and GMOs associated with factory farming, the commercial food industry, and the pharmaceutical industry, they become crunchy. And crunchy moms who prepare are crunchy preppers. Ladies, welcome to the show.
Tick, tick, boom. Who bringing the noise? Go baby, we bringing out toys. Separate men from the boys. Chopper be singing, should be on the voice. Bang, bang, we gon' ride out. Gang, gang, we don't die out. Want it like this, ain't no time.
Hello, ladies.
Out.
How's it going?
Hello, good.
Doing good.
What is a Crunchy Prepper?
Do you want to answer that?
So she's the brainchild of this. I'm really just a fun sidekick. I'm a foot shorter. But a crunchy prepper is someone who wants to prep and prepare, but in a way that's health conscious and sometimes allergy conscious too.
Yes.
Okay.
Holistic.
So prepping for what?
Okay, so that's a really good question. So the way that I pitch it is family readiness. We definitely focus on people who have families, and being ready as a family can be as simple as being prepared for a soccer game the next day, or for more serious natural disasters and emergencies. So you can be as extreme as you want to, but we tend to focus on what's practical.
And when you say health conscious, we're talking about healthy food?
Right. So a lot of preparedness, food and supplies tends to be less better for your body. So
High in sodium.
You might stock up on canned beans, and they are BPA lined. They have a lot of unnecessary preservatives in them. And the concern with that is, one, if you're somebody who views themselves as a crunchy person, you're not going to buy it. You'd rather starve before you purchase that kind of food. Right. But then also, if you're in an emergency, your health is the most important thing. So you really want to make sure that you're eating the most nutritious food during those time periods, not less nutritious foods. So if you can plan ahead and store the rice, beans, etc., that is healthy for you, then you're kind of reducing your risk during those emergencies.
Got it.
That's true.
So that's what crunchy is. I didn't know what crunchy was.
It's like
that's
a
more
holistic
okay.
They used to
lifestyle.
call it granola.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we shape
Now
our
I get it.
armpits.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
That's true. And I'm not real big into labels, but I think it's a good marketing scheme to get people to understand that we're in the wheelhouse of taking a different approach. So a lot of preppers might stock up on antibiotics and pharmaceuticals, and we'll be people who will recommend that you grow your own elderberries and make your own elderberry syrup. Mm-hmm. Does that give you a good idea?
The ability to find what you need without the systems that have been put in place to ruin us and make us feel like we're incapable. And I feel like the government has done a very good job of making us feel incapable of taking care of ourselves. Yeah. We're there to show people you're not incapable and you're not incompetent. You can absolutely do this. We have some step-by-step ways for you to do it for your family.
Do you show them how to grow different things? Is that part of this?
We have talked about, we call it living foods. Mm-hmm. So everything's from a storage perspective. You want to have stuff stored ahead of time before an emergency. So a way you can store living foods is by growing your own garden. I'm an urban gardener. I grow food indoors in my basement. Everything is legal.
Okay.
It's a lot of microgreens. And yeah, we talk about how to grow food for sure.
And how do you do that? You have, the lighting and it's
yes,
like a greenhouse.
I have.
Inside
it's really simple and it's not complicated. It's not expensive. I have racks, grow lights. My lights are fluorescent lighting, and it's not even full spectrum grow lights because microgreens don't need that because they don't grow fruit. And I grow regrows, microgreens. What else do I have? I have some herbs growing right now. And then I use tower gardens, which a lot of people think are hydroponic. It's technically aeroponic, but they're just those tall white towers that aerate liquid water and nutrients.
Got it. You lost me at Ponic anyway. So.
Okay. But there's a lot of ways to grow food indoors.
That got popular with marijuana growth.
It is. I have not done that yet.
Well, I think weed's legal now, so it doesn't.
Right.
You're good.
But just
in
we
case.
grow a lot of food, so it doesn't have to just be medicinals. It can be food.
What are microgreens? Because I always see, I've seen
Right.
your page, I've seen it grow, but it's like little plants, right?
So nutritious.
Yeah, so microgreens are just regular seeds for regular vegetables. And
Sorry, I'm not healthy guy. Like Joe probably has microgreens all over the place, but it's like,
So the most common
That actually made me choke.
are you into microgreens?
I know what they are.
No, I see them. I know what they look like.
Yeah.
But I've never gone to the store and said, I want microgreens. I'll buy broccoli.
Right. So microgreens aren't even a real thing. It's
See?
it's seeds of regular vegetables. So the most common one would be broccoli, and you're just taking a lot of broccoli seed and really densely planting it in a small area, and you're only letting it mature to about 14 days before you harvest it. And then you consume it versus it turning into a full broccoli plant. The benefit of that is it's low calorie, but a bite of broccoli compared to a spoonful of microgreens, the microgreens are 40 times more nutritious. There's a lot of research that shows that it aids in like the retardation of cancer growth cells. One might say cures cancer, but yeah, you have to do your own research.
They'll shut us down.
Okay, but yeah, the microgreens it's a fabulous resource in the preparedness community because let's say you have your rice and beans, then you can also sprinkle a living food on top and get a lot of nutrients. And it's something you can grow indoors. I have grow lights, you don't need them. I sell grow kits where you put them in your kitchen window or on your kitchen counter, and you put them outside.
They're super fun. It's like a chia pet you can eat.
It is, yeah.
What happens if we lose electricity?
So you can't grow microgreens commercially indoors if you don't have electricity. You can grow them outside. There's growers who do that. Commercially, I wouldn't try to do that. But just for your family, you can just grow them outside or in a kitchen window if it's the winter. The way that I kind of tell people is you need 4 hours of indirect sunlight a day for growth, but anything more is better. So it might take 8 days to grow with full 8-hour sunlight, but it'll take 14 days to grow with 4 hours of sunlight.
How's business? Who's your main customer?
Crunchy moms,
Crunchy
people that
moms.
are interested in preparing, but they saw, like Rhea said, those buckets of food that are macaroni and cheese or like hamburger helper, and they don't want to eat that. They want something that's better. They're used to eating organic produce and grass-fed beef and pastured chicken, and they want to know how to preserve that. You can put it in a can. You can dehydrate it. You can freeze dry it. And they just don't know how to do it. Everybody's afraid of a pressure canner. Everybody's heard a horror story about how it blew up. But it's not that bad once you get going. I started just a year ago.
This sounds easier than what I've seen. I sent you over some kind of like Patriot.
Yeah, from Patriot Supply.
Yeah.
Which is,
They're good.
They're good, but they get expensive.
Well, also it's for me. I mean, like hearing how it's produced, right? For me it's a little off, but I think for me it sounds a little harder, right, to do than what you guys are doing. I mean, natural sounds like the way to go because you're growing it, right? you know what I mean? It
You know
sounds
what's in
pretty
it.
easy.
Right, but you definitely want bulk dried storage as well. And what we always say is you want to be eating, or we want to be storing what your family's going to eat, what you're eating right now. People are always like, do you have a list? What should I pack? Well, you should pack what you're making as meals every week already.
Yeah.
So I think I mentioned
So a lot of pizza and burgers.
Right. Well, you can
get a dehydrator.
basically store everything you need to make a pizza.
Okay.
And I just saw someone can hamburger patties last night.
Yeah.
I'm doing it.
I've seen them canning meat.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So easy.
It seems like it shouldn't make sense, but I've canned a lot of chicken. Angela finds organic chicken super cheap.
Can you tell me how that would work? So you have like a burger, right?
Yep.
What does the canning process look like? If I had a burger and I want or meat, I guess.
So meat is low
Yeah.
acidic.
Okay.
So you want to can it in a pressure canner, and the reason you put it under pressure is so that it can reach 240 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
If it reaches that temperature, that guarantees that it has killed all botulism spores, because that's the enemy is
Yeah.
botulism. when you put food in a can and you pressure can it, all of the oxygen, like in these mason jars, the oxygen is removed from the can, and then that lid seals on top of it.
Got it.
So all of the enemies of food preservation are not inside that jar.
And you would still have to put it in a refrigerator, though, right?
No,
No.
it's shelf stable, and that's the benefit of canning.
Really?
Right. So if you have electricity go out and you lose all your freezer stash, you still have low acidic foods like meat and vegetables on the shelf.
My kids might hate me. I might get rid of that freezer downstairs.
Right.
To start.
You're outage proofing your freezer when you learn to can.
Wow.
Yeah, I love that.
How
That's
long
pretty
do you think when you can meat, how long do you think it'll actually last for?
Okay, so the truth is forever, because there's nothing in that jar that can have the food grow bacteria. The challenge is over time, texture will degrade and flavor will degrade.
And sometimes color.
Yes, and color, yes. So sometimes it won't be appetizing to eat. So in an emergency, you'll eat
But
it.
you'll eat it.
But in general, you want to try to eat everything within a year to 18 months. So any kind of company like Ball Canning will say that it's guaranteed for 18 months, and anything past that, they don't guarantee. But if you start to get into the habit of every time something's in season, you can it, your family's going to eat all of that within the year. And then by next year, you're picking apples again and canning it again. So you're not going to have any apples that are 5 years old.
Yeah, and you use it like people at Peach Trees. They'll can it.
Right. And I mean, we've started, I say you want to store what you eat, but we have also started eating differently since I've started preserving more food. I'm not going to go and buy freeze-dried apples from Aldi anymore. I'm just going to dehydrate them ourselves. I know where they came from. My kids picked them. They're like at the peak of nutrition. Dehydration is my favorite form of food preservation because it maintains almost all the nutrients. And then that becomes my kid's snack, is the dehydrated apples. You just have to make sure you drink water when you're eating dehydrated food, because
sucks, the
you'll
water.
become dehydrated yourself.
That's the only thing I dehydrated. I bought a dehydrator,
And you did it.
and I did it.
Were they good?
And you got dehydrated.
And I was dehydrated. No, but I was like, I'm going to do this with everything.
Yeah.
And then I just didn't follow
You
up.
got to try watermelon. It's
Yeah.
like fruit
Yes.
roll up.
It's like candy.
Crack.
I did pears, Asian pears. They're so good. They're like candy.
What's the process? How long does it take to dehydrate a pear? Or
About a minimum 8 hours, would
Yeah,
you say?
I would say 8 to 12 hours, depending on what you're doing.
Yeah, and it depends on humidity. So in New Jersey, it can take a little longer because we have humid seasons.
Is there a way to do it without technology?
Yeah, you can do it in the
Yes.
sun. People have been doing that for a long time.
Yeah,
And you
so
just lay it out on the stoop?
there's sun drying and there's air drying. They're basically the same thing, but you're either using the power of wind or the power of sun to dehydrate the food. You just need to get about 80 to 90% of the moisture out of the food, and then it's preserved.
And what do? You kind of shrink wrap it and hang it outside, or?
So when you're dehydrating it, you're usually laying it on some kind of wire rack, kind of like a window
Screen.
Yeah.
But then in terms of storing it, mason jars or Mylar bags.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my
Just
main
with a lid.
concern would be putting it outside, and bugs and everything else are getting.
Right. So in New Jersey, I don't really find it beneficial. When I lived in San Diego, I dehydrated some food outside, but there's a lot of pests here, and the humidity is really never low enough to truly dry out the food in this area.
Got it.
You're in like Arizona.
Right.
Yes.
That'd be good.
But
That'd be
if
ideal.
buying a dehydrator, it's really not that expensive of an investment, and it's really simple. I usually put my food in at night, I go to bed, and it's my alarm in the morning, and I turn it off. So that it doesn't require supervision.
So how did this all come about? Were you just, I know you were in the military, you were in the Marine Corps.
Yes. So I was stationed in San Diego. When I got out of the military, I started going to school there. And, transition is hard. So I found a group that was run by a former Navy SEAL and an active duty naval officer, and they started a family readiness program that me and my husband became a part of, and they taught us everything. So I always joke that the Navy SEAL is the one who taught me how to can strawberry jam, because that's literally what happened. And then once I saw it in person, how it was done and how simple it was, I just went off from there. So I think the next thing I canned was like all of my stock from my Thanksgiving turkey. And I just built up a stock from there. And then it wasn't until 2020 pandemic timeframe that people started asking me about these skills, and I revived them. And that was what Angela did. She started asking me how to do things.
Yes.
Can you can toilet paper?
You can can anything,
That was,
bro.
You can.
Toilet paper and chicken. We already know we could do chicken. So.
Yeah, she started asking me how to do things, and I was advising her. Now she knows way more than me. She started teaching people, and she started bringing me along. Every time she does a class, I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm kind of trying to do this homeschool mom thing. And then, it's very attractive to spread these skills to other
yes.
people. It's really exciting.
I want to just briefly tell you, in one of our homeschool co-ops, Rhea took the reins and taught a class on vermicomposting 2 summers ago. 3 summers ago. It was a while.
Worms. That's worms.
I was just going to say, can you tell me what?
It's pretty cool.
It's composting with worms.
Okay.
So I call myself an urban farmer. We have a microgreens business, and I really love the idea of doing everything I possibly can on my tiny little property. I have a third of an acre and a 900 square foot house. So one of the livestock items that I have are worms. So all of our food waste, eggshells, coffee grinds, eggshells and coffee grinds, I call aphrodisiacs for worms because it helps them reproduce 3 times as fast. And then you can take the worms, put them in your garden, feed them to your chickens. You can also take worm castings, which is their number 2s, and you can spread just a small amount of that in your garden, and it's about 7 times more nutrient than regular soil. So you can kind of get like mega growth crops out of worm poo.
Okay.
We have to relearn that. Isaac, my son, my 5-year-old, was so intensely in love with worms at the time, it became our family pastime to go through leaf piles in the backyard and pick out worms. So that was the jumping point for me once I got that. I'm like, wow, we're going to make our garden so much better. And it was March of 2020. My husband and I dug a 6-foot root cellar by hand. I was in the shape of my life.
Oh, my God.
And then I thought, my things don't look too well right now in our country. Free country. And we should probably stock up on food. So I did start with the bulk dry foods, doing it in Mylar bags and 5-gallon buckets with gamma lids. And then I really got interested in canning. I watched a couple YouTube videos, read a couple blogs, and then asked Rhea to fill in those holes. And once I started, I was absolutely addicted to canning all the foods. There's no turning back.
It's a skill that's attainable. It's not that hard.
It is not that hard. We have a nice ebook that we give to the people that take our classes, and we have a 1-page printout for water bath canning and for pressure canning. Easy to follow, easy to execute. You're not going to kill yourself.
No.
Do you have any like videos on YouTube or anything like that? Did you ever think about doing something like that?
Yes. So we have handles for every single social media page, and we're slowly adding materials to those. Angela does a lot of, what do you call them?
Like time-lapse
Speed reels. Yeah, time-lapse reels of her doing it just to show how simple it is.
Meanwhile, it's like a year. I'm just kidding.
So one thing that we do tell people to do, because we both homeschool, we're really busy, we do things in small batches. So I think you sliced your apples for about 15 minutes and then gave it a break and then continued the process. That's what I do.
Yeah.
I will sit and listen to a podcast and I will peel, 50 pounds of carrots, literally, in about 6 hours. And then I'll let it sit for the day. And then the next day is when I'll chop them. And then the next day is when I finally get them canned. I couldn't do all of it in one day.
Could you do entire meals?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do a lot of soup.
Really?
Stew. Mm-hmm. I made a great chicken tortilla base that my husband went nuts for last week.
And I like doing chicken noodle soup because when you're sick, you want actual good nutritious chicken noodle soup that you can't really get if you're sick because you're not going to make it.
How do you actually can? How do you pressurize?
With a pressure canner.
Okay.
So it looks like a stock pot with a lid, but it completely seals shut.
Crank?
Like a drum, a snare drum.
Okay.
Keys like that, or a hubcap.
Okay.
And then there's just a pressurized valve that releases all of the pressure, and then you cap it when it gets to the right pressure. And you just make sure that the temperature gauge doesn't get above 240. Well, it doesn't get past 250.
What happens then?
Well,
Explodes?
it gets to a danger zone, and you'll still have water in there, so it will drain all of the water. What's the next thing it does? Then there's an emergency pressure valve.
Oh yeah, there are many safety features on a canner, but one of them is an emergency release valve, which is just a rubber plug that if it gets too hot, it will pop out and it'll vent that way. But there's also a latch on the underside of the lid that when you turn it, even if you tried to pick it up with the lid, it's not coming off of the pot. So if you have a buildup of pressure, it's not actually going to explode in your face. There are many safety features.
Yes.
Not
But
your grandma's canner.
if you turned it on and you left your house for 24 hours, it would probably blow up.
Yeah.
Being preppers, known as preppers, do you get the, I don't need to prep, I'm coming to your house when it goes bad?
Yes.
How do you handle that?
Okay.
I know how I've told people.
I'll tell you, I'll teach you how to do it, but you're not coming over.
I I used to be a little timid about that, but now I very bluntly inform people that I don't even have enough for my own family, my own household. And then there are individuals. For me, it's my mother and my grandmother. They're integral to my life. They live down the street from me. They take care of me. They don't prepare. I know that if they came to my door, I'm not turning them away. So it's on me to be responsible and prepare for them, but I'm not doing it for anybody beyond them. And something I always tell people is visualize this person coming to your door and how comfortable would you feel to say, I'm sorry, and turn them away. There's like, I can't do that to my mother, but my girlfriend, who I've been trying to teach canning for 2 years and she doesn't have the time, I'm a little more comfortable to say, here's a bag of rice, come back next week and I'll teach you canning.
Do you think you'll ever get to a point where you're actually, doing like a car assembly line of like different things and you can sell it?
I will never do
Like
retail
meals and
again.
stuff, you mean? Like selling meals? Or...
Yeah, selling meals like,
did food.
here's canned burgers, for 2 months, right?
I did food production for 2 years in the state, and I will never sell a retail product again.
Yeah.
I think that's honestly, I mean, if you look at like what happened during the pandemic, I think that would be a huge, ticket item.
If it's healthy. If
Yeah,
it's different
I mean,
from art.
we've discussed a few things, but I think we really want to teach people the skills.
If you need investors,
Okay.
Well,
you know.
thank you.
I don't have any money, but I'll ask Joe to borrow some.
Just don't talk.
To be honest, we enjoy
Enough
education
of
and
this guy.
teaching people and giving them like kind of the skills to be able to do it themselves. And then just to speak frankly in terms of like we have very limited time because my focus is my family. And in terms of monetization, our plan is really to make everything automatic. So you could, purchase our online course and view it. And then, of course, if you have personalized questions, you can have a consultation with us. But I don't. With the microgreens, it's a lot of manual labor, and the time for money thing doesn't always add up.
And shipping.
Yeah.
Dear Lord, the shipping.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, dealing when you get on the topic, people are interested in it, but they're more like it is hard to make people understand. Well, the pandemic might have changed that for a lot of people, but when they actually saw the shelves empty. But this is life. Like, you've traveled. I mean, you're in the military. You were in the military. You traveled overseas. This is regular life for a lot of people.
Oh, it is.
Like,
It is.
our worst day is better than their best day in a lot of countries, and
That's why I like to refer to it as traditional skills because these skills have existed for hundreds of years. We've just forgotten about them because we have the convenience of not needing it, and we have to kind of return to that.
That was what sunk our ship, I feel like, is the convenience that our parents' generation and even their parents' generation got very used to after the Second World War.
I think that's why so many people like they romanticize about Yellowstone. They watch Yellowstone. They're like, this is amazing. Like, they just live off the land,
You're not going to be worried about much else other than feeding yourself.
Yeah.
And that simplicity is very attractive in this world.
Yeah.
but even the aspect of you're talking about antibiotics, growing your own,
Right?
without medicine, and that's it in a bad situation. You cut your hand,
Yep.
and it goes bad.
Yes.
It goes bad quick.
Yeah. There
Yeah.
are
Right.
so
I
many
mean-
herbs, though.
And
You just throw some microgreens on.
you just rub microgreens in there.
Well, so
Or maybe
there's
from Singa.
definitely a lot of herbal remedies.
Pour
And
some sing a beer on.
there's a lot of things that you can do before you have to get to antibiotics. I would personally definitely want some antibiotics on hand in an
Absolutely.
emergency for sure.
How do you store antibiotics? That's a big controversy because how do you get them? You get them, and usually they're in liquid form.
You just get a couple cases of bread and just leave them out.
Just make your own penicillin.
You're good.
Do you know the whole thing now that you can actually buy fish antibiotics?
Yes.
You know that.
So
whole
people
thing?
have been doing that for a
Yeah.
really long time.
It's the same material.
That's the suggestion that my former Navy SEAL advisor told me.
Is this
That was
company
like 15 years
still up and running?
No, they went and all got MBAs and now they're doing much bigger and better things.
Nice.
But I'm really fortunate that I had that experience. And unfortunately, it was in like 2011, 2012, and people in San Diego had no need or interest for these skills. I think it was just poor timing, but now they do.
When were you in San Diego?
I was on Camp Pendleton from 2007 to 2011.
Okay. You were after me. I was there from 98 to 2003.
Okay. Yeah, I was still in high school.
Awesome. Thanks for that.
And drink.
Old man.
Well, she has more kids than me, so.
What are some of the other aspects of prepping that you do? You guys physical fitness is big. You and your husband's a personal trainer,
Yes,
firearms instructor.
Yes, he was a personal trainer. As a matter of fact, COVID is one of the reasons why he stopped doing that because we live in New Jersey, so he wasn't able to train anybody for about 6 months.
Yeah, that's great.
And that made us start our microgreens business, which worked out really well. He was hesitant to start firearms because of the state, but a lot of laws have changed recently.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot easier to be an instructor. So sure, protection like firearms or other self-protection is really important. In addition to food preservation, which everyone thinks is the most important, really water, how to store it, purify it, sanitize it, is if you don't have water, you have nothing.
That's the only thing I know how to do.
Well, that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Purifying it.
Yeah, purify, make water. Yeah.
And then, of course, first aid medicine and communications. And for me, communications are things like cell phones, internet, ham radio, but then also your community. So who are you contacting during those times and why?
I have a whole bunch of like cups and strings connected to all my neighbors.
Yeah.
Do you get the Baofeng radios?
No.
The little ham radios. I bought a bunch of those.
Okay.
I got my GMRS.
Yeah, there's a new. It's all over. I think it's on like TikTok and YouTube. It's the survival radio,
Yeah.
where it's like it has a direct in to like emergency services and police
That's
and
nice.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something that I like about ham radio is that if you start before an emergency making connections with other hams in the community, in the country, then when something happens, one of our plans is my mother-in-law lives in San Diego. So if there's an emergency, I can reach somebody in her community who could then go check on her.
That's cool.
Right.
I have a CB in my truck.
Do you have one?
Yeah.
It's a great thing to have also.
Yeah.
There was a big event, big disaster, and the ham radio operators were being really. There's a group.
Did you say ham or hand?
Ham.
Ham.
Radio.
Okay.
Yes.
It's about. It was.
No, I was just making sure. That's what you
Yeah,
said.
he likes to make fun. I apparently have a Brooklyn accent.
No.
I can help you with the whole pan thing.
But after that event, that same state said we're not going to use ham radio operators anymore, and they started giving them problems. But they were what was the big hurricane? They were rescuing
Sandy?
people. No, it was
Gloria?
Katrina.
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 So Katrina they were organizing rescues. They were where the police radios were down. And then they had another event after that, and they said ham radio guys are not allowed on the airwaves. And that's the whole reason for it.
Yeah.
It is.
That started in like
2006.
But even like when people started getting into it, because it derived from people used to do Morse code.
Well, that was some crazy times too, because they were, just going from house to house, stealing, everybody's supplies, and got crazy over there.
Yeah, and they were actually confiscating firearms too,
Yes.
Yeah.
which is pretty crazy.
I believe that.
When I went to boot camp in 2006, there were still a lot of people.
Enough with the years.
I'm just saying it was it was a year after Hurricane Katrina, and even people in my own platoon decided to join the military because their life had not resumed yet. They were still living in FEMA trailers. There was no opportunity. They didn't really have any food or anything, so they joined the military.
Yeah,
And that was a whole year later.
it's terrible.
Yeah, there were videos of the areas. There's still some of them are still destroyed to this day. They still haven't been rebuilt.
So you were stationed in Camp Helen whole time?
Yes. So mostly on Camp Margarita 33 area.
I know exactly
And
where it
that's
is.
headquarters.
I was Las Pulgas.
Okay. I don't remember where that is.
So it's 43.
Three? Okay.
Yeah.
I was at Camp Horno for about 2 months.
Yeah, that's the next one over.
Okay.
Did you say Camp Porno?
Horno.
With the H, Horno.
H. Horno.
Okay, just making sure.
You're not the first person to call it that, though.
The P
I
is
don't know
silent.
I don't know what goes on.
I was there in 2007 when they had the fire on Camp Pendleton and like that whole area burnt down. And then shortly after, they all deployed, and I got sent to headquarters, and I was a supply clerk. That's what I did for most of my time.
So I think we talked about it in our first episode. They said that Trump was in. He started a war in like Syria or Iran, and they showed a whole bunch of explosions and like it was supposed to be an exercise, right? I found out later that it was actually in Camp Pendleton, but it was also in Las Pulgas. In, the canyons.
Right where
over
you
there.
served.
Yeah.
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 And you recognized it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So my first year in the Marine Corps, I actually went to DLI,
Okay.
the Defense Language Institute, and I was learning Chinese. which is a completely different world. And I didn't do that successfully, so I was reclassified into a supply clerk, which I honestly loved. It was a really great experience to do that. But during my time at what we call Intel school, it was language school, but you learn really quickly that a lot of things that the media is telling everybody isn't actually what's happening.
Yeah.
I can't believe that.
No, it's true.
I believe every. No, I
No, it's
believe
true.
everything.
Seriously.
I believe everything.
Yeah. So I learned a lot of that in my first year. And that was basically I've been aware of things for a really long time because of that. I was
You
a
wanna
very,
get into-
very naive high schooler. I went to Baptist school and I joined the Marine Corps thinking I was going to help Middle Eastern women and children overseas. And then I quickly realized that things aren't exactly how they're portrayed sometimes.
Were you in Pelham the whole time?
Yes. Yeah, 2007 to 2011. And I was just a supply clerk, eventually supply chief for a very, very small comms unit.
Supplies.
Which is why I should know more about telecom, but I just ordered
Supplies
the
important.
parts.
I actually did. I was in charge of I worked for Halliburton after, and I was in charge of the actual supply platform.
Okay.
So it was called MIMS back then.
Yes. Yeah.
Marine Integrated Material Management Systems.
Yeah. So we partnered with MIMS. MIMS would get mad at us a lot.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're much older than her. So.
Well, so my year I got out,
years.
2011, is when they eliminated all of that, and basically supply clerks were omitted, and Marines could just order the parts they needed, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I left right as that was all going on, so I don't know anything about that.
When I went for Halliburton, I automated the supply portion of TQ, which is in Al Taqaddum in Iraq, and I was living out there in Iraq with Marines, and it was hilarious because you're just a civilian, just kind of hanging out with these Marines, and they're like, they don't know what to make of you because they don't know you were a Marine,
Right.
So I'm sitting there hanging out with them, and they're like, who are you? Like, you're in Dockers. Like, what are you doing here? But it's the same, that we were going through the whole, the MIMS platform that was built. We were helping the battalion commanders, regiment commanders with, kind of formulating the supply reports and things back to the commanders. So.
Yeah, I really loved what I did. But my favorite thing is that everyone likes you when you're a supply clerk.
Oh, 100%.
Because you can hook them up with gear. So
Especially when you're checking out.
yes, so I don't know how much I was truly liked or I was just the supply clerk. But either way, I had a good time.
I went in when I was checking out, and I go into the place, and the supply clerk looks at me, and he's like, "Oh, you already returned everything," and I was like, "Yes, I did."
Is that where you met your husband? Your husband was a Marine, right?
Yes. Yeah, I met him at DLI about a week after boot camp. I arrived at DLI. My girlfriends, my female Marine friends, all had a 96 on Columbus Day, and we went to San Francisco because DLI is up near Monterey, California. And a girl had a crush on him, so she invited him.
You fought her.
They did. They did get in a
Marine
fist
ninja
fight, and he kind of came in and thought we were all kidding, and I said, "No, really, they're beating each other up. Help me," and he did, and I was betrothed to someone else at the time, but when I saw him, I was like, "I'm gonna sit next to him at the IHOP tonight," and the rest is history.
Awesome.
True love.
Yes, true love, very, very much like PFC Marine Corps true love. I mean, we're still together, but we got married 9 months after we met.
I think that's another podcast. The whole, well, it's. I'd love to get into like a little deeper about just being a female Marine, in the Marine Corps. Just seeing it from that side, because I hear just crazy stories from other Marines, and their Marine Corps was drastically different than my Marine Corps.
Yeah, everyone's story seems to be a little different when it comes to that. I feel like I was lucky and I had a really good experience. Usually my units were very protective of me. I was usually the only female, but everyone really treated me like a little sister. That was my experience. I know a lot of people don't have that experience. It was really hard for me to walk away from the Marine Corps. I wanted to stay in. But I also wanted to have a family, and it's really hard to parent the way I wanted to when you're working a full-time job.
We were a couple months in, and we had a supply clerk. They made me go in, and I had to sit in like the office, the battalion office in the beginning. And there's a whole bunch of like store clerks and things, like kind of just like hanging out, all the different clerks. And it's a different Marine Corps being in that office than
Yes.
being outside.
So what was your MOS?
I was a motor T, so I was
Okay.
35, 31. But I
Okay.
was also supply truck, and I was always
Okay.
very involved in supply. So funny story. So we get in, and you know how like you call everybody by their last names, right? So it's like like Corporal Ramirez or Corporal Fitzgerald, whatever. And we were really friendly. We're all from New Jersey. Everybody that was in there, so we're all sitting there talking, and I said I used to, every time like the staff sergeant would get in or the second lieutenant, I would say, for instructional purposes only, Darren, come here. And I would call him by his first name. And finally, the second lieutenant comes in just screaming like, would you shut up with the goddamn first names?
Your husband teaches fire. You're into firearms too, right?
Yes. So before children, I was really into it. It was a huge hobby of mine. I'm usually pregnant, so I don't go to indoor shooting.
As you are now.
You identify as pregnant.
Yes. So I don't go to
I have
indoor
a wife
shooting
like that.
ranges very often because there's controversy about whether you should be in like areas with loud sound
And lead's not.
and
good
lead.
either.
Yeah, touching a lot of lead. So it's very intermittently that I've gotten into the range. I did get in a couple times last year, so I got my NRA certification. We both did.
Yeah.
And I passed, which was very easy to do. But I haven't gotten my permit to carry yet because I'm pregnant.
NRA is that to be an instructor?
So that would be my next step. But this is just showing that I took an NRA course, and I just like to kind of build up evidence that I take firearms ownership seriously and that I do get regular training in case anything were to ever happen in the future. I have a good track record that, it's more than a hobby. But yeah, I don't. What is that NRA certification?
I just thought it was that you're getting instruction on how to properly and safely fire your weapon.
I think it safeguards you, right? Just in case,
Yes.
something happens or something in your house.
That would be
it's not
Justin's
negligence.
argument.
Yeah,
Yeah.
protect you. And I'm getting more training from him on Sunday.
Yes.
Especially for women, this
Yeah.
being able to get a carry permit now is a game changer as far as safety goes.
It is, well, especially in our state.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of instances of people requesting concealed carry or permit to carry in the past and being denied, and then unfortunately them being attacked by whoever they knew was going to attack them to begin with.
Yeah.
So that's changed a ton. It's definitely something I want to do. I go to Philadelphia with my kids a lot by myself because we're homeschoolers, so we're in museums a lot. And it's only been recently, and I think it really has more to do with the amount of children that I have, that I can't cover all of them in all directions. And sometimes we're walking in public city blocks, and I just know that I'd feel safer if I had a weapon on me. I know how to use it. I know that I would be safe and not put anyone else in harm. I don't know if I could say that about every single current carrier, but it's definitely something that I would have no problem doing.
I should tell you that you and I together, with our amount of kids that we have, we're just as much as
Okay.
Brian.
Wow.
Brian has 7 kids.
Impressive.
Poor Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, every time you add one, they go in different directions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It gets a little more difficult.
Yeah, the firearms part of prepping is a lot of people only focus on firearms.
That's
They
right.
they
Right.
do, and you definitely want something to protect your stuff.
Yeah.
You have to know how to use it properly, but the reality of you actually using it in a self-defense situation is definitely less likely than a lot of other emergency situations like a hurricane.
And you do focus on that, right? You do focus on the firearms portion of.
Yeah, so my husband Justin does all of that.
You're not just crunchy girls. You're firearm crunchy girls.
We both have
Organic ammunition.
yeah. Well, they're all minerals, right?
I think actually, funny enough, AOC was just talking about this, or not AOC. Greta Thunberg was just
She's still here.
talking about this. Yeah, she was just on TV the other day
Was it
talking
the risk
about.
of lead?
Yeah, it was like organic missiles and like it was crazy.
Are we
Well,
serious?
Dead
Wow.
serious. Dead serious.
Sometimes lead poisoning works out
Yeah.
the right way. With bad people.
Yeah.
Because you're doing canning classes and mostly women are showing up to them. But
Yeah. We have a few men interested. There are men in our preparedness group on Facebook, but it's usually women.
I'm one of them.
Yes, yes. But I think it's mostly because in general they tend to be the decision makers at home when it comes to food.
You're
so
the one who sources everything if you have a family.
Not in my house.
Yeah, not in my house. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now my wife does a lot.
I'm the cook.
Yeah.
okay.
But with firearms, that's a big thing. Like there's range that I go to. It's in South Jersey, and there's women-only
Yes.
classes.
Yeah, I
Which
think
is
that's
good.
great. My husband does that usually in March. It's Women's History Month, so that's usually the month that he focuses on giving women the opportunity. There's a lot of women who won't take classes co-ed because a lot of their concerns stem from domestic violence in the past.
Yeah.
And then there's women who won't take instruction from men. It's one of the reasons I'm looking into getting my certification so that my husband can be the main instructor, but I can assist anybody who feels more comfortable with a female. And I helped him a little bit in the class that we took.
Yeah, it was great.
But yeah, that's a concern for sure.
And it's somebody, even the ranges you go to, sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, sweetheart, come in," and you're looking at them like, "Really?" A lot of women have that problem.
That can be a little hard. That's
Well, plus
something.
it's a little bit more intimate, right? Because you're kind of, when you're aiming and stuff, you got to position a certain way.
Yes,
I'm sure they're,
definitely.
you know.
And people have triggers. I mean, some people are getting firearms training because they've been threatened with a firearm by a male in the past.
Yeah.
So you just have to be really careful because the goal is to get them feeling confident enough to actually use their weapon if they needed to. So we can't deter from that.
So give me a promotional pitch. What exactly is the whole process of, the Crunchy Girl?
Okay,
Crunchy
so
Mom.
Yeah.
So we're crunchy preppers. We say that bread lines will not be gluten-free. And what that means is that if you are going to
Did you say
rely...
bloodlines?
bread lines.
Oh,
bread lines won't be gluten-free.
Got it.
So if you're thinking that you're going to depend on someone else, which is ultimately going to be the government, to provide you with the things that you need, you're going to be not satisfied, but ultimately you're going to be unsafe. So you need to prepare for yourself. So we have a lot of people in our community that are gluten-free, and it's a really good example of if you prepare ahead of time, you can have all your gluten-free grains or whatever else you replace them with stocked, and then you don't have to worry about what you're going to eat. But if you wait for that emergency to occur, and then all the food pantry has is, rice-a-roni or mac and cheese, that's what you're eating.
Yeah.
And a lot of people cannot eat it.
You're in serious trouble if you have celiacs.
Yes.
The grid goes down,
really are.
and you're eating at a soup kitchen.
So-
that the military set up.
So one of the things that kind of re-sparked me getting involved in canning and food preservation is my son has a condition called alpha-gal syndrome. It is where he was bit by a tick, and he is now allergic to all mammal meat and dairy. And yes, I know. It sounds unbelievable. And I didn't want to believe it
I'm
when it first
Googling
happened.
this once we get
I know.
Is it a form of Lyme disease?
Yeah.
It's a tick-borne illness, yes.
Alpha-gal.
Syndrome, yes. And the reason that it's called that is because the body has an allergic reaction to the molecule alpha-galactose 1. It is something that is inside lactose. And we discovered it because he had anaphylaxis at 2 a.m. one night.
Jeez.
And his dinner, I think, was a hot dog. And then a month later, it happened again. He had one bite of a meatball, 2 a.m. in the morning. He had anaphylaxis. So we figured out what he had. I could go on and on about alpha-gal and tick-borne illnesses and how the government's connected to that. But what is my point? So
Joe's
when,
an alpha male, and the Marines did it to him.
so when
Until I get bit by one, then forget it. It's over.
when
Just granola for me.
So you have to, and now do you have to carry EpiPens with you?
yes, I have them with me right now. Actually, he's not here, but
So that's another problem too in a grid down situation.
yes, it is. So you can always save your EpiPens. They're pretty efficient even after they're expired, as long as you haven't kept them in a hot car. But so he got this condition. The COVID scam started. I started to notice that as a 4-year-old at the time, all his safe, kid-friendly foods, chicken nuggets, that type of stuff, was not on the shelves. And some of these never came back. The brand of chicken nuggets that was safe for him, they just stopped producing. And I quickly realized that I needed to be able to feed my kid, and I needed to feed him food that a 4-year-old would eat, because he's not just going to eat, chicken that I've grilled up for him. So we went and got chickens. That was the first thing we did. Our chickens are undocumented because we're not allowed to have them where I live. But at the time, I decided that we needed some protein for him, which would be the eggs, and if we needed to butcher chickens, we could. In a few months, all of the food kind of came back onto the shelves, but I didn't know that at the time. But then it did start me thinking, okay, my food storage was pretty good because I had been prepping for about 10 years at that time, but it wasn't really good for food allergies. And I really hadn't been thinking about, one, my son and his restrictions, and also the fact that he was 4.
Yeah.
And he was not going to eat certain things even if he needed to. So we shifted.
Did you actually have you done the butchering?
No, I haven't.
'Cause that's a step that's hard for people to get across.
we came close because I had 4 roosters, and we almost butchered them, and then I auctioned them off instead. So I didn't have to do
You
that.
would do it.
I remember I was going into elementary school, back in the day when you actually walked to school by yourself,
Uphill both ways in the snow.
Yes, with I couldn't afford sneakers, so I had newspaper on my feet. But we were going through one time, and there was for the most part, I mean, it was, it's going to sound bad to say, but this is predominantly white neighborhood, right? With when we're walking to school, and there was this I want to say Middle Eastern couple that moved in, and they're about halfway down the block. And I'll never forget this. It freaked me out for the rest of my life. I must have been going to first grade, and we're on our way there, and the guy comes running out with a pot, right? And the chicken comes flying out of the pot, running around the yard. I'm like, what the hell's he doing with that chicken? And at that point, it didn't even dawn on me that it would be, he was
Dinner.
going to eat it. You know what I mean? So freaked me out. And ever since then, I was like, those guys are animals. I would never do that.
Oh, you could do it if you were hungry.
And now I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm going to do that in a second.
I have no problem. We almost did a
Yeah.
butchering day,
Oh yeah.
and I have butchered a rabbit before.
You have.
And rabbit is delicious.
Turkey and a deer.
Yeah,
I've never had
Turkey and
rabbit.
deer sounds cool.
yeah.
I could never butcher a rabbit. They live underneath
it's
my
really
my
easy.
shed.
They are easy to peel.
It's super easy.
I've seen videos of it, and it looks surprisingly easy.
It is.
They are really cute, though.
All of their organs are in a sack, and the sack just drops out, and then you have meat.
It's
And meat
amazing.
rabbits is a big prepper.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because they're quiet.
And it's
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
turn them around in 2 months. It's a
Yeah,
it's a
it's
very
very
short period.
We're gonna have to put a mature on this podcast.
Yeah.
Not allow kids to listen to it.
I don't know.
Well,
my
they
kid
have to.
has seen it.
Farmer kids have no problem.
Right. Kids know how babies are made, and they know how death happens. Too.
We're such a babies. I have a friend that grew up in Poland, and he was telling me, he goes, Brian, you Americans are so alike. He goes, I grew up on my grandmother's farm. And he said it with a very thick accent, though. But he said we would start a fire, and they always knew. The pigs always pushed out one of them. And he goes, we slaughtered it, and then we ate it. And he was a kid.
Wow.
He goes, I have no problem doing it. I was like, I don't know if I could do it.
Brian and I talked about you do the whole the not cow, but you do the pig, right?
I just got one, yeah.
Yeah.
Share.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I got with a friend of mine owns a farm upstate. So her and her husband, and what they do is, to give a shout out, Spinner Farm.
That's Spinner Farm. Where is
Spinner
that?
Farms. I don't know a town, but it's way upstate. She drove it down here.
What it is.
So they basically said, all right, we're going to do pig this year. One year they did cow. I didn't get in on it, but they get 10 people. They order 12 piglets. They raise them organically, running around, free range. It's pretty, she sends me a video. Yep, I sent them off with a spar and a kiss, and she's spraying, they're playing, and she kisses one, and then the butcher. But they had such a beautiful life
That's it.
until the last minute.
That's right. They have a beautiful life.
They
one
weren't.
day.
They weren't it wasn't evil. It wasn't.
They
you know,
told
a
us
lot
early
of,
on about Wilbur.
Yeah, a lot of our food isn't treated very good. So at least this, it does taste delicious.
That's probably
I-
part of why it tastes
I
so
can't
good.
watch the whole video. I said you're crazy, but that's part of life. And
How
That's cool.
How does anybody think it gets on the grocery?
we don't want to know. We don't want to see how
Yeah.
literally how the sausage is made.
That's why it's funny with kids, right? You don't tell your kids that, right? You don't tell that comes from a cow. I remember
We do.
Yeah,
I do
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
I do.
pretty honest.
Yeah. And then my wife will look at me like, don't tell him that. And I'm like, it did. It came from a cow.
Well, my little guy and my one teenager is always Evan's always going, I want deer. And my wife's saying, stop saying deer. It's and he goes, no, it's deer. It's good.
We call chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
Deer,
just
deer
doesn't-
jerky's good. You ever had deer jerky?
Yeah.
It's really good.
It's yummy.
Venison is really good. It's very lean, and some people just freaked out by it.
Yeah.
But it's
I don't know why it's some of the most locally sourced food.
Yeah.
Considering where we live.
It's
I think that's to kind of help the economy and help the farmers. I think that's what we should do. Is
We
go
should
out
be.
and- yeah.
it's
We should be investing in stuff like that.
some of what's going into the meat is a little scary.
Isn't it?
You know, that's why it was a little bit more expensive a pound than going to one of the local stores.
Sure.
But I know what was happening there,
Yeah.
and they're
Right.
not people coming. Because if you have hundreds of animals, you have to inject them with stuff. You have to, I mean, they're all corralled.
They're on a
getting beaten.
feedlot.
Yeah.
It's not a happy life, and the science shows, if you want to look at somebody really good about this, Joel Salatin, he's a regenerative farmer. I love him. I wish he was my dad.
Polyface Farm. That's his farm,
Polyface
right?
Farms. Yeah, he's down in Swoop, Virginia. He has an amazing setup where the cows go, and when the cows poop, the chickens are sent after it to eat the grubs out of it and disperse and make sure there aren't too many flies. Like, he has pest management built in the way God intended things to be, and the way nature just does naturally. But one of the biggest problems that the industry faces is the crowding and the vaccinating and the illness that comes from it. And then you get higher stress hormones in the animal prior to slaughter, and that ends up in your meat. And then you're ingesting hormones that aren't even human hormones. And it messes kids up. Like, little kids girls are having puberty way earlier than they should have puberty.
Yeah, there's so many unknowns with food right now.
Yeah. So,
You know, we have so many allergies. Like, my son has a peanut allergy. Who's the Kennedy guy? Robert Kennedy. So I was listening to him on Rogan, and he's like, well, all right, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but what does he have, 11 brothers and sisters? And he says, none of them have a food allergy, but 4 of my kids do. And it's after he gives the whole timeline. I'm not really sure what it is, but I'd rather have something that wasn't injected with stuff.
yeah.
But
I think back then too, like when we developed an allergy, like I had I was allergic to iodine in shrimp. So if they didn't devein the shrimp before I ate like cocktails, I would get sick, and I would like get hives and stuff like all over me. And it was anywhere that I had hair, so it'd be like I'd have like a mustache and a beard, red, just hives and my forehead, and anyway, but I because I was eating it so much, I used to eat like during like the my parents would put it out for like Super Bowl and like all these different occasions. Yeah. And I would eat
and it was
shrimp
only
so
if they weren't deveined.
Only deveined, yeah.
Oh.
And then now I can eat it vein to vein, doesn't matter.
It just went away.
Yeah, it just went away.
Weird.
Yeah.
Exposure therapy.
With growing stuff like gardening and everything, what about the whole issue with seeds? So some seeds they don't like. Was it legacy seeds? What are the seeds called? That they're organic. They're
Right.
Heirloom.
Yeah.
heirloom. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So they are old school basically, right? Now new seeds you go buy and off the rack, it doesn't reproduce, right? Like or you can only get like one other.
So usually those are
harvest
called
item?
hybrid.
Yeah.
And usually hybrid seeds don't allow you to grow the exact same vegetable that you planted that year. It'll usually be something different. Heirloom, organic, those are the way to go.
My wife actually for
Non-GMO.
for Christmas she actually bought me a pack. Aww. It's thousands of seeds. It's
Yeah.
an heirloom seed
It's
pack.
like an emergency pack.
Yeah, so basically like when the apocalypse comes, we plant, and then 9 months later maybe I'll get a tomato plant out of it.
Did you ever see those things on like on TikTok and YouTube and all the others? Those little like clips where they take a seed and like they'll put it inside a banana.
Yes.
Does that work?
So like a lot of those are bunk and don't work at all.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll show them planting pepper seeds and then it's like a cucumber sprout that's coming out of the item.
Yeah.
So it's all kind of like,
Yeah,
editing magic.
dummies like me would know the difference. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. She just made a whole watermelon.
You don't have to do any of that. You can really pretty much put seeds in soil and make sure that the soil stays moist and it's at the right temperature that it needs to be, and then food grows. It's not that hard. And then if you have a problem with a particular crop, that's when you start to kind of troubleshoot that.
Yeah.
When I was in California, I had in San Diego, San Jose, I planted right in my front yard because I didn't have that, just in California, you don't have really a yard, So we had this like just front little patch on the walkway going into the steps. And there was a little piece of grass there. And I planted 4 big, huge tomato plants. And those things grew almost like 20 feet tall.
Really?
Yeah. To the point where like it was all over the place that I had to just lay them down. It was just too much.
Yes.
So I had to I had a 7-foot barrier up top, those metal beams that come down, and then I had to drape it across. So like it was almost like vines like going off. So people would come in and they would go underneath the vines like to come into my house. Yeah.
It sounds whimsical.
I did the same thing in San Diego. We were in a homeowners association off base, and I planted all of the landscaping. I made gardens. I got a ton of compliments. And then at the end of the season, they sent me a letter, but it was already over.
Yeah.
Mission accomplished.
They told you to get it out of there?
Yeah, they told me to get rid of it,
grow
but
food.
it was really beautiful, and I grew a ton of food in, 2 to 4 feet.
There's just something about like the weather there and the
Yes,
soil
it's
that
easy.
yeah. We had lemon trees. I had an orange tree in the backyard.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I have a pear tree in my backyard. The pears are great. The problem is once they're ready, I'll grab a couple. Yeah, these are good. Next thing you know, the squirrels, the birds, they know.
Yes.
I listen to there's a great prepping podcast, Prepping 2.0. Shelby Gallagher and her husband, they're authors, and that's what they say. They go, the birds know, the animals know. As soon as you have to be ready, like especially here, we have to be ready for them all the time.
Yeah, we have eaten peach pits all over our front lawn because the squirrels eat all the peaches.
Yeah, and you're like, yeah, I got a nice peach tree, but
I got
the
one
squirrels,
peach.
the squirrel.
Yeah.
Well, I'll eat the squirrels because they're obviously well fed.
Can you peel them well?
I don't know. I'll try.
I haven't done a
Angela may be able to
I
teach
haven't
us.
tried that yet. I'm not opposed to it.
I had a guy that came home from work, and he said his son, they live upstate New York, and he said his son got into hunting, but he wasn't a hunter. Says, I come home and my son's got a squirrel on the barbecue. He goes, I just closed the door. I didn't want to.
So your books, right? You have ebooks, you said?
Angela's written a really good ebook. I consume a lot of this kind of content, like any kind of canning, food preservation ebooks, and hers is the best.
Oh, thanks.
So you wrote it.
And where can we find that?
You can find that on thecrunchyprepper.com.
Thecrunchypepper.com.
Yeah, it's only $9 right now. It's a 21-page ebook talking about water bath canning, pressure canning, dehydrating foods, dry storing foods, and growing living foods. It's a lot of bang for your buck.
Awesome.
Nice. I like it.
How many inside your ebook? How many things do you go through each kind of fruit or whatever you're kind of canning? Do you go through everyone one by one, or you just do a kind of a generic kind of this is how you can?
It's an overview. We do delineate between water bath and pressure canning because, like Rhea was talking about earlier, it depends on the acidity. On yield pH scale from high school chemistry.
I do my own pool, so I got that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anything that is less acidic than 4.6 on the pH scale, you have to pressure can. So that means all vegetables, all meats, any soups, stews, things like that. The only thing you can water bath is really fruit jams, salsas, and like pickles. So there's not a whole lot you can do with water bathing. However, there's this whole world of rebel canning out there. Many groups of rebel
This
canning.
sounds naughty.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're in West Virginia and you got a huge tub of water and you got it on a couple bricks and a fire underneath and you're water bathing chicken for 4 hours or whatever it is. You can do that. It's not what the U.S. DUH tells you.
Yes.
But I got that from Holly, the U.S. DUH. But it can be done.
That's the USDA.
Yes.
I got that. I don't know what microgreens are, but I knew what that was.
He's like, who's the duh?
Yeah, they do so many good things. Like, say, Fruit Loops is more nutritious than an egg from your backyard chicken's butt. So I don't give them a whole lot of credence.
Is that true?
Yeah.
That's what they claim.
Fruit Loops?
It's not true.
Oh,
But that's what the government tells
I
us.
love Fruit Loops. I was like, that's it. I'm stocking up on Fruit Loops.
I do stock up on Honey Nut Cheerios. I do probably have about 20 boxes.
I knew Kellogg's was onto something.
He's got a weird story behind him. Look him up.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Very weird.
Everybody has a weird story.
Oh.
You go down the rabbit hole about just about anyone now. It's just like, it's creepy.
And endless, you're right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we talk about the difference between water bath and pressure canning, but then when it comes to each individual food, it's very easy to just have a reference book on hand, like the Ball Canning book or Nourishing Traditions or anything else you're going to have a reference point. How long do I have to do asparagus? How long do I have to do chicken in pints or chicken in quarts? And it'll give you that table. It's because I don't remember them all.
Your book has a link to the PDF, the free PDF download of
That's right.
of the USDA's approved recipes. So the National Center for Home Preservation is an organization government run that gets funding and then they test recipes. And once they've tested and approved it as safe for canning, you can absolutely rely on that recipe. What happens is they run out of funding and they stop testing things. And then the concept is that it's not safe when really it just hasn't been tested. So, for example, canned elderberry syrup has not been tested by our government yet, but people have been canning elderberry syrup for hundreds of years.
I have some in my pantry. Nobody's died yet.
They're testing it right now. So next year they'll put out a
Not that
recipe
you know
and it'll
of.
be safe. But it's safe right now.
It's
What about and if you ever did a canning for dummies, I would be one of the dummies that would read that. How do you know it's bad? So like you get past the 18 months. A normal person, does the smell test, does the look test. You already said it might be brown, might smell different. How do we know it's not healthy or it's not good anymore to eat?
So you're going to have the clearest sign because you're going to take the ring off the top of the jar and you're only going to have the flat on top, the flat lid. If that seal is broken, I would not be consuming that. I'd have no interest
Because
in
the gas pushed it out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bacteria.
And that would mean bacteria. Let me talk briefly about botulism, too. I know you jump in on this, too. So when I was putting the ebook together, everybody's afraid of botulism. But
What is botulism?
it's not the spore itself, but it's the byproduct that the spores put out that is poisonous and toxic to us.
Right. So there's lots of different types of things that are all referred to as the same word, botulism. So the one that we're concerned about is the botulism that causes a disease that's like a foodborne illness. It puts you in the hospital. You get very sick from consuming it. And what that is when the botulism spore matures past its spore stage and it creates a bacteria that is harmful to our bodies. We can't process it. Prior to that, if it's below its spore stage, we can consume it, and we actually do all the time. It's in the air, it's on the soil, it's in food that we eat. It's when your baby touches something and puts it in their mouth, they're probably putting botulism in their mouth. But it's something our body can process, and it's not harmful because it hasn't matured past its spore stage.
And if you do end up consuming it, you will be hospitalized. But here's the really good news. Out of all the cases of foodborne illness, of which there were like 3,500 serious foodborne illnesses, only 18 of them were botulism, 17 lab confirmed, no one died, and none of them were for home canning. They were from restaurants,
Yes.
poorly kept food in restaurants. So this myth that is promulgated that if you can at home, you're going to kill your family, it's just bullshit. Sorry.
No.
Now we have to get it X-rated.
This is a podcast, not a
Say what you want.
NBC.
It's not FA or whatever it is.
No. You just got to say earmuffs before you say it.
Earmuffs for the kids. With the state of the economy now, people are struggling like crazy. Someone like me, I have multiple kids. I don't go organic, right?
You
Right.
can't have
But
to afford it.
the way you guys are describing it, isn't it now kind of cost effective? Like when you prep, when you're buying stuff on sale, you're using everything. If you're canning it, doesn't it make it where it's a little bit more affordable to eat healthier now?
It is more affordable. I think the two ways is shopping sales, which you kind of just have to go into stores and look around. Sometimes you're not always going to know when there's a deal. Talking to managers about manager specials. And then the other way would be wholesale. So there's a wholesaler in Philly that we go to that is exclusively organic, and we get seconds or pickouts, which is the idea that a truckload of vegetables was denied, say, at the Whole Foods door, and they brought it back to their warehouse, and they're selling it for like pennies on the dollar. So
Nice.
Snag it.
40 pounds of sweet potatoes for $20.
Right.
And it's all good.
It's organic.
It's
now,
like foreclosure food.
it is. Now
Basically.
that food will go bad faster than food that is fresh. However, it's wholesale. So you have to think about the fact that I'll buy bad wholesale food and it'll still last 3 months in my basement compared to if I bought sweet potatoes at the grocery store.
That have been sitting there for 5 months or on a
Right.
ship from the other side of the world.
Yeah. And if you can that, now you have a whole nother.
Yes, and canning's not the only option. Dehydration is also an option. Canning depletes nutrients a little bit more than dehydration or freeze drying.
I was trying to come up with that word, freeze drying. So freeze dryers used to be about $40,000.
So now they're $3,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what
So
is
that's
free-
changed
what is
the
freeze
game.
drying?
Freeze drying is when it's similar to dehydration. That's how it's stored. It's a dried product. But what it does is it freezes the food and then instantly sucks the frozen water molecules out of the food through this air vacuum, right? And then the food is preserved because it doesn't have moisture in it.
So all the mountain, right? That's what Patriots
Yes,
buy, right?
yes.
That's what
So-
all
Yeah,
that stuff
MREs.
is.
Yes.
Yeah.
So similar to dehydrated food, you need a good water source to rehydrate. So vegetables, you're not going to be eating like a snack. You're going to want to rehydrate. So if you don't have water, then they're not useful. But then the benefit of freeze drying is it's nutritious, but it's got more of a good texture. So there's certain food you can dehydrate and the texture is chewy or it's flaky, and the freeze dried food, the texture is great. So you definitely, if I had a freeze dryer, that's what I would.
Yeah, because
But the
I've been
$3 grand.
told like you could take a pizza,
Yes.
And freeze dry it.
freeze dry it.
Yes.
Like we can go to Brothers, get a pizza, freeze dry it in 10 years. Spritz it with water.
Yes.
And it tastes exactly the same.
So it's like space food.
Yeah,
Space
this is
food.
my speed then. How do I do this?
$3,000.
You need $3,000. And actually look out
Yeah,
for
it'll
Black
come-
Friday sales because Harvest Right.
I was just going to say, Harvest Right, if you're listening, we'll
Yes.
take a sponsor. We'll put a freeze dryer right here.
I sell for them.
Yes.
Do you really?
And do you have a link in your book?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
And Black
Do
Friday.
you know
Do you
anybody
have
that
one?
would
You have
give
one
us an
yet?
endorsement?
I don't have one.
But you've used one.
But they're amazing.
Yeah.
I've used one.
They do $500 off on Black Friday.
Okay.
And they do payment plans.
They were. I know they
and
were doing
layaway.
payment plans.
$2,500,
Yes.
and I can just get a pizza and
I'd
eat
like-
it in 10 years.
Yes.
So my understanding of it
I'm in.
was, and this is another one I got from that Shelby Gallagher. She goes, "We'll make trays of food.
Yes.
Like you're gonna make Big Ziti.
Yes.
What chicken color parmesan? We eat tonight, and then everything goes in the freeze dryer.
Yes.
They put it in a Mylar bag, and it's good for. I mean, they say 25 years.
Yes.
It's brilliant.
Which is
No, it's really cool if you if you cooked it. It's funny if you cooked a really good like Thanksgiving dinner, and like every year you
just
eat
over, yeah, yeah.
it. That'd be pretty.
Well,
awesome.
during the apocalypse, you
Yeah.
could realistically do that,
Yeah.
and just be like, "All right, we got the Thanksgiving dinner. We cooked,
It tastes even better this time than it did last year.
Well, everybody else is starving. You just like,
Invite the neighbors.
yeah, I'm just throwing stuff out.
You
the
just
window.
freeze dry the pig, like sitting there with the apple, you know.
What about bunkers? You guys gonna get into bunkers? Anything?
So I don't know. I don't know where we land on this in terms of
Because some of the TV shows make preppers look crazy.
right, and you know a lot of that is edited,
Yeah.
and they're kind of encouraged to exaggerate what they do.
Right.
I'm kind of anti-bunker. I'm all about dying when it's my time to go. I'm not worried about that at all. I just know right now I have a responsibility to my children and my family to keep them safe and alive as long as I can. So I'm not too into bunkers. But I'm definitely into getting a plot of land far away from large populations.
Amen.
And living
That's me.
communally with friends. I'm all for that. I lack the funds, but I have skills. So
Yeah, skills are
you
important.
need to hire.
Sharing skills is very important too.
So that's so it's funny. So once 2020 hit and we were going through like all this crazy stuff, a bunch of us got together. That's actually how this room came about, right? Because I have another at my house. I have another speakeasy, kind of like this, and it's a bar
Joe likes to drink.
as well.
I could
Yes.
not tell.
But it's another speakeasy. So you kind of walk into it, but it was put together because we would talk or like, you know, we would say something on Facebook, it would get taken down. We're like, all right, we're just going to meet. And we would just meet in certain places. But yeah, it's funny. Like we talked about like, you know, creating, you know, a bunker and, you know, kind of, you know.
Yes. I mean, that's a little bit how we got to know each other better, I would say.
You were in a bunker?
Just two crazy moms.
We truly before 2020, I didn't have a lot of close friends, and I think that's because I was trying to fit in with society a little too much.
Yeah.
And then I threw all that out the window, and I found kind of my village, if you will. So there was a time when a lot of us were talking about going into a piece of land together, and how that would work, and how we would operate, you know, as separate family units and a larger family unit, and all of that kind of thing.
That's exactly what I was getting to before and kind of got off track. But
And
yeah, that's, yeah.
Intentional community.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the
That's
name.
a good way to say it.
So there is, it's called lands.com, and that's what we were looking at. We were looking at lands.com. They
Buy
had
a piece of land.
Yeah, and it just, you know, you can go and we were talking about Amish. You can build like Amish houses for,
Yes.
you know, like $2,000 or $5,000, whatever. And you know, we were talking about buying, 40 acres or whatever,
Put up a few houses.
and put up a few houses and have just your, you know, your
A
own.
lot could go in. A
close
lot of dynamics could go into that. With,
Yeah.
did you ever hear of Pastor Joe Fox?
I can do internet.
Yeah.
Oh, I got this.
He's a big prepper, and he's like an ex-military, but just like, and he's a very religious person. But he bought a huge piece of property in the Ozarks,
Yes, that's where we were looking.
We were looking in Arkansas too.
and he was saying,
Don't do it.
Why?
It's terrible.
Why not Arkansas?
Well, the land is really hard to farm.
That's what he
It's all
said.
rocky.
Because it's yeah.
But the thing is, he invites people to live there. But if they don't get along, so he actually lets you come there for a year to see if you gel with everybody, and if not,
You won't.
Like,
You won't. So in the military, I was in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and we used to go down to the Ozarks all the time. I think I told you this
Isn't it
story.
really nice there though? Like,
It's really nice, but the people are inbred.
So that was a concern about mine as well. Is that
So I'm
It's
sorry.
really bad.
And on this podcast so far, we have people from Alabama that are most likely going to come and kill us. And now the Ozarks have been in.
So bad.
US stuff.
Like, yeah, like, brothers and sisters type stuff. It's gross.
Oh, boy.
It was
It's
terrible. Like,
just really super rural. It's
it's
oh, it's
rural.
crazy. Like there was one time where we went to this party. I was in Fort Leonard, Missouri, in Motor T school, and we went to this place just outside of the Ozarks called Crocker. It's a town, and we went to like this rock concert, and I'm sitting there on the just all of us got like
people from Crocker coming and just
Our-
hunting us down now.
our coolers, right?
Brian loves people from Crocker.
Nobody loves anybody from Crocker. Just so you know. I mean, we're talking Children of the Corn type stuff. It's brutal. So we went there and like we're sitting on our coolers and it's just like 4 or 5 Marines just having a good time, like hanging out. The next thing I know, they're like, "Did you talk to my sister?" And I'm like,
He was
"Jesus,
dating her
What
already?"
is wrong with it?" He's like, "Only I talk to my sister."
Like Maury, but with less teeth.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like we had to. It got so bad that we had to like run and jump into a truck to get out of there. And I was like, "This is insane. I've never seen anything like this before."
Well, maybe if you move there, they would be a little bit nicer to you.
No, dude.
You'd
No.
have to assimilate to their culture.
Yeah, you'd have to get like
Violent
a tribal and like cut off sleeves, chewing tobacco, the whole deal.
And only shop at the Dollar General.
I watched the show Ozark. It looks beautiful.
It does. Yeah.
looks
And so the people, right, that are fighting them all the time, the hillbillies, that's them. That's exactly who they are.
They're rich hillbillies. They were growing opium.
No. I'm talking about the ones that attacked him in the beginning. What's the one girl like?
I've never seen it.
No.
Oh, that show was great.
Oh, how about the one chick that says
She curses.
that crazy shit? What'd she say? She said something like
I don't give a fuck about fuck.
yeah. No, she said if you're gonna stop me, you're gonna have
You're
to
gonna have
fucking
to
kill me.
It's on. It's like a.
Oh, it's like a meme now. It's so funny, but she like screams. But she's ultimate hillbilly, and then all her brothers. It's about her and her brothers that they become like this local gang, and they
That
attack
kid's
like
from
other drug
Middletown,
lords.
by the way.
Who?
The one who plays
He plays it well.
the cousin that's always up on the top of the.
Oh yeah.
He's from Middletown.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, he plays it well. He must have lived in Crocker for a little bit. Yeah. Anyway, but so we talked about the whole getting a commune together. It wasn't a reality to me that I would ever do that. Right.
It's very complicated.
But your friend, like, once 2020 hit, who I am as a person kind of all culminated and came together, and I really knew who I was once 2020 hit.
And you knew who everybody around you
Exactly.
Yes.
quickly.
Yeah.
It was a big exposure of
Yes.
people.
Yeah. And now it's like, when you go close to somebody now and, you just, that radio frequency that they radiate, you're just like, oh my, what?
I like masks.
Yeah. Well, it's not only that, it's like the bug eyes and the screaming. And you're just like, oh.
The fear.
Yeah.
Fear-based
Yeah.
action from those
It's
people.
fear of fresh air.
Well, that's what it was. They got to a point where they were so brainwashed, right, by the media. And that's, you and I probably know best here, right, how brainwashing works, right? So it's everything just because she was in the Marines, not just because her husband brainwashes her or anything. That's not what I was saying. I didn't know if I was trying to take this somewhere else. So no, it was in the military they brainwash you, right? They break you down, when you're in boot camp, and and it starts with fear, and that's exactly how it played out in the media. It was that fear based, and they kind of strip you all the way down and say, oh, we're here to save you, and
Yes.
this is what you need to do. Yeah.
So just for the record, my daughter was born the day that the pandemic started.
Oof.
And I didn't really watch the media, so I really wasn't convinced anything was actually going to happen like everyone was whispering
Same.
it was.
Yeah.
And then when it happened, I was still like, no, this isn't really going down. And then months later, I was like, wow, I was really, truly shocked so many people believed everything that was happening. And I connected with this lady, and she also,
Alegna.
to give her credit,
Are we allowed to say that name here?
Like never bought the bullshit for 1 minute.
Yeah.
So
I got angry.
you know, we have friends who we're connected with now who were fearful for a while, and then they finally, you know, woke up slowly
Yeah.
over time.
I would fight people in stores. Like I would fight stores.
'Cause you
I'm
never
coming
wore a
in.
mask.
Not once did I put on a mask.
Did you? Oh, really?
once.
Not once.
It
Still
was
went
just like
shopping.
I would put it on and I'd be like, why am I doing
Wear a mask like this is bullshit.
this?
Yeah.
And especially when they came out of a box that was made where the virus was made, and it says on there,
says-
this does not protect from
It says
viruses.
Wuhan.
Yeah.
on
Yes.
it.
And you're like, what, really? And they're like, put it on, cover your nose.
Yes. Yeah, I got kicked out of Target once, and I didn't go back for a couple years.
I was surrounded by 3 police cars in a Walmart parking lot
No.
I forgot about
with
that.
my 2-year-old.
Well, that's unfortunate part of how people just follow leadership, no matter what they're saying, and it goes down a
What's
very
that
deep hole.
experiment they did where an actor was sitting in a room?
Oh, and they stand up.
Oh no, the guy was told to shock the actor
Oh,
in
yes.
the room.
Yeah, yeah.
The Milgram experiment. Look that up. The level to which people will comply, they will kill an innocent bystander just because authority tells them to.
Yes.
Yeah.
We should have had them on the episode that you didn't air when we were doing the conspiracy
Theories.
When I was trying to say something before, I was saying, are
Just
we
get
going to
us
start
started.
talking
This
about
isn't going to air, is
about the moon landing?
Yeah.
Because me and Joe had a whole
Yeah, we had this
discussion.
debate.
And we had a whole
where
debate about the moon landing.
Like I know 100% that there was no moon landing, and he 100% thinks there's a moon
yeah.
landing.
I said it was on this news, I believe.
But I'm like, think of.
Sorry.
I just believe everything I'm
sorry.
told.
I said, think of everything that's happened, like the big bright light that we've gotten over our heads, that how much we've been lied to. How? I just don't see how they can accomplish that, right? Just knowing what I know about our government.
Yeah.
No way.
I just believe everything I'm told.
That's true.
I got a bridge to sell you.
I'll buy it. I will absolutely buy it.
He
If I
actually
can-
will run it.
If I can own
He
a
works
bridge,
on a bridge.
if I
he
can,
worked-
if I can own
Oh,
a
yeah.
bridge, Brooklyn Bridge, if it's for sale, I love Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I'll buy it.
Awesome.
So,
Well, thanks for coming.
any closing
Thank
thoughts?
you.
Really appreciate it. We should do a part 2, I think.
Okay.
And your husband does firearms, is right?
Yes, that's correct.
Awesome.
Braveheart Training Academy.
Braveheart.
Our last name is Wallace.
Oh,
He's a descendant of William Wallace.
is he really? Did
Really?
we prove that, or did you just?
No,
make that up?
we did have
Really?
the genealogy. Now, William Wallace did not have children because he was maimed, right? But his brother did.
Does he have his head?
No. No, I think the British have that, right?
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
No, they put it on London Bridge.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's the connection
story.
to Braveheart.
That would be really cool if you came in here with his head.
Yeah.
No, but if you want to know
Favorite
what
guest immediately.
if you want to know what my husband looks like, you can just Google William Wallace and
And that's
He
what he
really
looks
does.
like.
Really?
They look- yeah, it's
Can he come when he comes in? 'Cause
So we're
he-
talking Mel Gibson.
It's no, yeah. Well, so we named the company Braveheart, and then I designed the logo, and it's a lion with a AR in it, or it's really closer to an AK. Really, it's just a rifle, and I did the Mel Gibson blue coloring.
When he comes in, can he come in
Right.
with the painting and the kilt and
Which
everything?
that movie is awesome, and I love it, but it's completely inaccurate.
Yeah, everybody
everything's
says
wrong,
that.
but it's very motivating. So.
It is awesome.
Awesome. Well, this was American Sidebar. Have a good day.